So moving on to the final shaping of the baguettes so that we can offer our customers any baguettes today. I have the youngest ones on this side, so I'm going to start from this other end. And now my goal is going to be to stretch them out, get them in a nice uniform shape. There's probably many ways to do this. It's important to close that seam. And the other thing that I'm going for here is just somewhat of a consistency, both in the skin so that it's one cohesive bread, but also in the overall amount of dough through that cylindrical shape. I very much judge the baguette's readiness based on how tight the dough is. It needs to have attained a certain level of relaxation. This dough, to me, is still on the edge. So I might actually take a pause, do something else for a moment, then come back to this. Bakers are incredibly resilient, and we will find a way to do things even suboptimally. And actually, there's no going around the suboptimal phase of running a bakery. At least I don't think so. You're going to get it in one of two ways. You're either going to get it because you truly don't have enough capital, just funds to build your bakery properly up front, or you're going to get it because you're clueless as to the amount of hard work that it takes to run it. Either way, because if you have a lot of capital, you might not be used to what still needs to be done behind the scenes with or without money. If you don't have the capital, you might be willing to do the hard work, but you're going to be working a lot harder than you have to be for longer than I wish to warn. You know, and unfortunately, like, it's years. And just like using this situation here with this particular bakery as a good case study, it's been 6.5 years since both I and the former owner of this space started in our garages. And it's not that long in terms of business cycles. Proof for the first 2 of those years really had extremely limited resources. We were hand mixing. We didn't have a dough sheeter. We were working in a home infrastructure without the proper utilities, the proper, really anything. It was all a mess, a joke, really. And what kept us going during that time was just sheer will of getting this done. And we were improving our garage. That was our edge, our strategic advantage. One edge and strategic advantage. I believe nowadays you kind of need multiple. We had the improvement piece down where we had a reasonable degree of confidence that every year our space would improve, because I grew up in that kind of a family that, you know, we did a lot of projects. We didn't mind doing plumbing or electrical when necessary. And so every winter we would improve our garage, make it a little bit better. You can imagine what happens if you don't have that one particular strategic advantage over the course of 6 or 7 years. Let's just assume that the smallest projects that we ever took on at the garage were to be almost impossible. Like, we put in an employee bathroom about a year in. Well, what if putting in that employee bathroom was so cost prohibitive because we couldn't do the work ourselves that we had to wait another year to even think about it? Maybe that's such a fundamental that we would have done it regardless, but maybe not. Maybe we would have just continued having our employees use our children's restroom, and we would have struck that compromise. Well, you know, the seasons progress, and you know, your business carries on. We all are humans. We have a finite amount of energy to give. The harder that the work is up front, it sort of has an impact on everything. You know, how well will you retain the staff that you train? How much of that burden are you going to end up carrying over and over and over and over and over again, year after year? And the things that you can't do beyond just the baking of the bread, because I'm not going to, you know, make any kind of comments on whether this brand had better, worse, or the same quality of bread. The ethos was the same, you know, the connection with the customers was the same. All of that was a brand strength. The owner shares the same passion that we have, and was doing it for a lot of the same reasons. But some big differences were just improvements over time. In the case of building out a brick and mortar, we started from scratch, which is the hardest way of doing it. Some people could not understand because we were getting forced out of our garage. We were on a tight timeline, and we were doing it in a risky way. To me, what happened here is a little different. You know, I don't know what caused the original move out of the garage. My guess is some level of discomfort working from home on this type of a project. Maybe wanting to do products that you can't do as a cottage baker. I don't really know, but in this case, the decision was to basically take over a cake pop bakery, and you know, I guess it was probably fine as a cake pop bakery, but there was no real changes to the layout, no real efficiencies made, and so if I'm baking, I'm moving this thing out of my way while I'm shaping. If I add a few humans back here, add a few racks, there's only so much I can do. So, you know, roll that up to the whole business. And you can only employ so many people because you don't have the space for more. You don't have the refrigeration to scale. You're missing a lot of things that become bottlenecks. And I think the core difference is just how we made certain decisions over time. The unfortunate reality is that you can't just be making good bread and serving your customers well. Our economy seems to be almost designed to squash you over time if you don't grow to a certain level. You know, so as a sourdough baker, what does that mean? Well, it means I need space to make a good amount of bread and hold it over for over 24 hours. That's the chief difference between me and, you know, everybody else, is where everybody else can sort of mix, shape, and bake right away and get that bread out of their production space. I have to hold on to it for a long period of time. So space is a requirement. Refrigerated spaces are a requirement. There's a number of others, you know, table space. If you make 1,000 loaves one day, how much table space does that amount to? How many racks are you going to need in your space? So it's important to allow for growth before you even experience it to a certain extent. And the less you allow for it, the less you'll be able to fill growing demand. Because if you do have a good product, and if you market yourself well to your customers, people will absolutely come in the door, and people will come back, and be a great thing. You're going to become a community staple, but your community will then struggle to understand why you're not keeping up. They're coming in the door. Why isn't there any bread for sale? The behind the scenes is kind of the devil in the details, and it's a thankless devil in the details. Nobody on the proof team ever comes up to me and says, hey, you know, thank you for giving me this, you know, oven I get to bake on that bakes 120 loaves at a time, or for building this beautiful bakery. Nobody, you know, cares. I was working on the Shea project for over a year, and I was excited about it, but meanwhile, you know, my bakery was still running, and the people who worked for me did not really care much about what was happening in this facility across town. So those are sort of hidden realities about running a business that need to be confronted, because the sort of ignoring them leads to the same result, and that's you hit a point where something happens, you know, maybe it's health, maybe it's a bad business relationship, maybe it's something to do with people that work for you, or people that or people in your local government, whatever. There's going to come a point where you're disrupted in some way, and if you're not actively improving your circumstances, if you're not making it more possible for your business to exist peacefully within the framework of your life at large, I think there will come a point where you say, I just can't anymore. People ask, you know, what the like statistic, how many businesses survive. Businesses don't always fail just for lack of customers. It is absolutely possible to fail with customers flooding through your doors because the problems are different, and you don't necessarily go into your business prepared for those. If you're a good baker, or you know, good at connecting with people and getting them to buy your baked breads, maybe you don't know anything, you know, even the first thing about electrical connections that are required to power your ovens. So it's a lot of decisions to be made when starting a business, and I would say with the baking business in particular, while it's a lot of fun and I think it's very grounding, there's probably hundreds of businesses that would be easier to operate in terms of the amount of knowledge necessary to do them well. I mean, I was interested in this business for the human connection in that way. It's in the way that when you get it right for people, you sort of become a part of their, you know, their world, and people really grow attached. There is a way in which we make bread that, you know, is ours. Like, I mean, we're too busy making bread to really pay that much attention to what everybody else is doing. Of course, like all bakers sort of inspire one another, and you know, in our case, like we're connected to a whole global community. But there's some aspects of just how we choose to do things that will influence, you know, flavor, texture, and then more importantly, when people come in our doors, we have a particular way that we wish to, you know, interact with them. It's like our brand personality, if you will. We're defining that more and more, and trying to offer a particular type of experience when people come in our doors. I think what's special about working in food is if you get it right, you truly can build something that's lasting, that's generational. And there's evidence of that. The food brands that people think of that have been around for, you know, hundreds of years, it's not every industry that you can point to, but in food there's literally brands that have been around, you know, for generations, and they must have been doing something iconic, especially in those early days, that people grew such an attachment. It's like now a staple in people's homes, certain brands. In our case, I think what's interesting in particular about bread is we're tapping into a nostalgia in the type of bread that we make. You know, it's rich in tradition. It's something that I think people are missing, and yet we're a modern brand. You know, we're not a namesake, as some of the oldest bread companies have become. They're no longer associated with artisanship usually. So it's sort of strange because we're acting as a disruptor through a sense of reaching back into the past, reaching back for something nostalgic. And that disruption can really take root. I believe that sourdough bakeries like Proof can exist in a lot of communities sustainably around the world. They're going to come in different shapes and sizes. I don't recommend doing it the Proof way everywhere. Frankly, like if I had to be the one evaluating those problem sets, I'm confident that scale would change with every place and also every owner ambition. It's something you have to remember in the beginning of this is what is it that you want, because there's something very romantic about the sort of corner bakery that's run by a team of 2 to 4 where everybody kind of does a little bit of everything and they do just enough for their community. It's very sustainable. It's maybe not any form of a wealth generating activity, but a lifestyle. That is a really valid approach to sourdough baking as well. I think it most often exists in the cottage format though. The commercial format is a much bigger undertaking, and arguably there's economic conditions around the whole world that prevent you from staying true on integrity, product quality, while still remaining competitive in the commercial space. I think it's important to find your strategic advantage, your particular niche. If you're going to bank on artisan quality, you've really chosen a hard road, but it's possible, and doing so I think is very rewarding. Increasingly so for Proof. You know, it's no longer just about making great bread anymore. We've got people in our organization that are training in all forms of human leadership. Some of those people are quite young in their careers. They started, you know, just scrubbing sheet pans for us, and now they're running teams. And to be able to be a part of that kind of growth in another human being's professional life is extremely rewarding, albeit very difficult in terms of responsibility. So anyway, I think commercial baking comes with a lot of caveats. It's easy to do it wrong. It's easy to spend years of your life and then, you know, wonder what was all this for when things change and sort of come crashing down from your expectations. The path to doing it right is somewhat narrow. I think there's multiple roads to Rome, if you will, but there's still certain things that you must be aware of, and probably certain extra skill sets that give you a better probability of success. And you've definitely got to have some like entrepreneurial superpower, whether it be with customers, which, you know, in this case, Hope had in her brand. I think we've had, you know, a fair amount of that with Proof as well. That may or may not be enough. You might also need to have some business superpowers, whether it be being able to make your spaces better for more economy, or having some deep pockets, or knowing someone with some deep pockets. Hopefully over time I'll be able to spend more time advising others on how to build these types of businesses. I've been doing this now for a little while, seen a number of things, witnessed successes and failures, and I think it's a lot of fun to work on these projects personally. I find them very stimulating. So these baguettes need to proof in these couches now, and then I'll be able to bake them. They should be ready when we open the store, and they aren't, but that will get better over time in this location. Yeah, everything in this location will improve now. You know, this is not our first rodeo. We have a couple other spaces where we bake bread and serve it. And the goal is to build really nice systems that we can pass on to our teammates so that I don't have to be in 3 places at once. This location is almost an hour away from our headquarters. It's quite a journey. But if done right, it actually helps us reach our goals, which are to stabilize our production through the week, have demand, have somewhere to sell our bread every day of the week, not just market Saturday. So we're getting there, building bit by bit. Sometimes you got to take the opportunities that present themselves. You know, sometimes an opportunity is just way too good for your overall goal not to endure some short-term discomfort. And that's what this one's about. You know, frankly, I have a lot going on at our second facility, the Shea facility, that flour mill, the R&D kitchen. I want to be there. I want to be building those programs. If I'm here, I'm slowing down my development there. But sometimes things hit you from left field that you either take or leave. And yeah, everybody's got to make that decision for themselves. For me, I've built a bakery and I know what it takes to build one from scratch, and it's at least a year and it's a lot more than you wish to spend. It's an insane amount. So to be able to come into an existing bakery that we can plug into our environment and to be able to start selling bread almost immediately, it's a huge leg up. In that sense, I owe my friend, you know, a huge debt of gratitude that won't ever really end, because it's a big opportunity for proof and for everything that we're working on. Our team of over 40 bakers will all benefit from this. The demand distributed evenly like this through the week will help us to pay better wages, have better opportunities. That's all along what we're working on now to serve our internal community as we build for our external one.